Good morning. Guys, no panic. We've got enough space inside. There won't be a need for the overflow. Okay, we have got seats. Can we just, No, there's seats here. There's seats in front. How many people are short? Don't panic. How many people are outside? There's a seat here in the middle. Thank you. There's another, don't put bags on the seats, guys. But Mkolisi, somebody sitting behind you there? Oh, no leg space. Move the panelists to their place. First round. Don't take people to overflow, man. Is there volume in the overflow room? Yes. Oh, okay. Let's all be seated, I think. This is not a 40-seater room. Oh, David, my electric overflow. Tim? We'll be starting in exactly 3 minutes. We're just doing just the last arrangement of the seats. We've got 2 more seats inside that you can benefit from. You've got one, my seat is available and this one, so there's 2 more seats in front. Is everybody in? Yes. Nobody's on overflow? No. Perfect. We don't want people overflow because they've come all the way here, because I can use this seat. Yeah. I agree with you, Anand. I don't think we should... but it doesn't look like there's anybody else who's outside. Can you run, Brenda? When do they run that? It's supposed to be happening now. When do they run there? Yeah, if there's people there, they can come because we can sit here. You are that light. I thought there was a video that precedes me. The video?
Sikhala City.
Good morning. The breakfast was not that much, but that was a beautiful scene and setting the scene of what the CUF is about and trying to do. My name is Nosi Posiwisa Damasane, and I will facilitate the program today. We don't have a long program, but we've got very interesting conversations to take place. Just from a housekeeping point of view, I'm sure everybody saw where the bathrooms are. And please keep your phones on silence as much as you can. And this is a very interesting story before I actually get to what it is that the CUF is. It's a very interesting story of when things can fall apart in our country. When the industry and customers could not speak at all to Transnet. The doors were completely closed. And we saw what it did to the collapse of volumes and everything else until industry came forward and said, it stops here. We need to talk. And therefore, we need to do some changes. And one of the best things that the Minister of Transport, the Minister of Public Enterprises at the time, the late Pravin Gordhan, actually appointed a new leadership at Transnet, and the doors were opened again. So a few people to thank. B4SA, Putim Kolisi, leading that delegation. I was still the advisor to the minister at the time to tell us that the bug stops here. And that's when the National Logistics Crisis Committee, amongst other things, because there were committees that were driving for the presidency under the Operation Vulindlela, that were driving security, logistics, and energy, the three key pillars of any economy. And solutions that have actually come out there over the last 3 years of involvement of the private sector assisting Transnet constructively to rebuild the nation has been an amazing moment. One of the lessons that we took out of that was, I'm the chairman of Richards Bay Coal Terminal in a different cap when I'm not facilitating. And one of the lessons that we learned was that the bulk industry is extremely organized. So it is so easy to sort out issues for the industry. So the coal industry is all congregated under the Richards Bay Coal Terminal. So you can't talk as an individual and you see as you are being fussy because RBCT speaks for the coal industry. Subsequent to that, the Iron Ore Users Forum was created. And that forum does the same thing. All the players in the iron ore industry come together and they can approach anybody anywhere. So all the members are able to have one voice to Transnet and to government and to any other stakeholder that is actually required. And also not just the voice, also solutions to actually assist the industries. There was also MECA for the manganese operations. Again, very consolidated people talking for manganese. So we looked at this and we said, you know, what actually makes it, what makes the bulk industry be heard is the fact that they are organized and they've got a point of entry. And the CUF was born out of that. When we looked into the container industry, we did realize that there is a lot of associations and the CUF is not here to take any of those roles. It's a coordinated effort that actually gives exactly the value that the bulk industry gets. So in a nutshell, I thought that background would just help you understand why CUF and what is CUF, which is the Container Forum. So it's also registered and somebody else will come and talk about the legalities of how it works and the fact that it's not chasing profit, it's actually here to assist and what exactly the role is. And if you can just run the slides for me with that background. So therefore, I'm just going to go into, somebody can, oh, I'm given this thing. Sorry, guys. I'm not too, yeah. So basically, I've touched on the first thing that says that the container sector, the logistics system is still operating and therefore in silos. Are we running? Am I running? Thank you. Oh, I would rather you run. Perfect. Go back once. Thanks. So addressing the issue of silos, the logistics players in the container space can actually get out of the silos and utilize this voice so that we deal with things like delays, Because sometimes the delay is between the shipping line, the trucker and Transnet. Sometimes it's between the guys carrying the information. Sometimes it's SARS. Sometimes it's the freight forwarder. Just to pull everything together for this industry to promote the hub concept for this country became very important. And therefore, we're looking at how do you deal with the inefficient logistic systems and the duplicated efforts that we're putting. So we are trying to centralize that. So launching this forum today, we're marking a milestone that is looking at this forum as a collaborative platform that will not only provide a unified voice, but also drive innovation and reform the container landscape for the country and the transport sector in general. And what is beautiful about it, it's aligned back to government mandate and decisions that they've taken, because you know now that we've got the port reform process that was concluded but is activated to corporatize the TNPA, and we're also looking at the rail reform process that was launched by Minister Barbara Creecy, which is actually now in action. So the biggest driver of the reform processes is how do we let the private sector in to actually work for state-owned enterprises and government itself to get the best value. So the progress that we've seen through this collaboration, and just looking at the container sector in particular, we've seen improved coordination, with encouraging results, because there's now improved coordination among players, shipping layers, cargo owners, terminal operators, and transporters. And I think a case in point was how, not the war room, but it was more like the war room in Cape Town, looking at how do we recover from the December, where there's a crisis. And the CUF becomes that center to drive the coordination between Transnet, its customers, and all the other service providers into a solution. So the purpose is to agree on those priorities, execute cross-industry initiatives, measure outcomes, and then the results will be published all the time. And the next slide, how does that work? How does it deliver value, the CUF? From strategy to delivery, it operates through a structured end-to-end project pipeline where you initiate the project. Therefore, we have the intake of the real industry pain points, and it's submitted by members. So it's coming very much from members to say, we also want you to look at this for us. And then the working group design, cross-sector team assembled, and the CUF's intention is not to employ a lot of team assembled, and the CUF's intention is not to employ a lot of people. It's actually to utilize the people that we have in the value chain, but just pull them together so that we don't miss out in terms of what solutions would look like, and assembly there. Then we formalize the project, charter scope, KPIs, and accountability. And then we measure the execution, delivery against the milestones, and report on a frequent basis that we agree on. So it's actually going to be a working committee, a working forum, all the time solving the problems. And what makes it different is that it's industry owned, it's not government driven. It's neutral facilitation, no commercial agenda. Every project has a signed charter and KPIs, and results are published. And the working group principles are time-bound mandates, cross-sector representation, decisions by consensus, and escalation path to steering committee. And just looking at the governance architecture, we actually have an interim board, and the board members are here today. Somebody will talk about them. And they were finance and audit, governance and nomination, as well as projects and outcomes, where I want to go in, and then the 7 working groups and the delivery hub. On the governance and nomination, there's founding members. So what will actually happen is that as the members are actually joining in, and we will talk about membership, we actually will have a board that could constitute about 12 people, and 2 independent, and 10 people that are actually coming from the associations that are on the first layer in terms of this. And the sector working groups will look at ports and terminals, rail and intermodal, roads and gate flow, back of port depots and operations, data research, skills and safety, sustainability and energy. A typical example, already the CUF is organizing to work with Dar Rasalam to actually establish how are they dealing with some of the challenges we're having in South African ports in the container space, and how has people like DP World work around the wind-bound terminals. and still use the state-of-the-art equipment that we have. So these are tangible projects. The vision for South Africa container sector is that we want to have a regional container hub. We've been talking about it, Juanita, for a while now, and we have certain aspects of it that are actually great, where through stakeholder workshops, we can conceptualize solutions. We are making sure that we are transparent, the systems are revitalized, research capabilities, digital transformation, as well as efficiency improvements, so that we have economically reduced costs and high throughput, operational excellence, which is faster turnaround and reliability, environmental sustainability with lower carbon and greener technology, that will talk to road to rail as well, and then strategic growth in terms of the national infrastructure and job creation. We're also looking at events of this nature, thanks to the people who collaborated to get this event together for us. We can't afford where we are yet. Maybe we would never, because we're an NPO, but thank you for the people who actually made it possible for us. So we'll be having an annual industry dialogue where industry, government, and SOEs can talk in a structured way, solve problems together in a frank and solution-focused engagement process. We're looking at a biannual container conference where we allow research papers, global speakers, and local speakers, regional competitive focus, and then quarterly outcomes briefing, which is a dashboard release, initiative updates, and member engagement, so it doesn't go into a dark hole and then you don't know what it has actually solved. And then the working group clinics on the technical deep dives, operational alignment sessions, where things like technology and information management can actually also go in. The one most important thing is to realize that because the CUF is not a commercial entity, so there is no competition issues. We don't have the Competition Act affected at all because we only discuss service. We don't discuss the commercials that you get into. Next slide. Why it matters is that it changes a fragmented container system and to try to marry and match the bulk structured forums that are actually working effectively for the bulk sector at the moment. And this is what we did not have as the container industry. It's a coordinated, institutionalized collaboration, and it protects and builds under what we saw in the success of the NLCC. And I think I'm going to end it at that, hoping that it's clear in terms of how it actually works. Oh, the last slide is just how we win, how we're going to do this happen. Efficient flows through competition, collaboration drives, as well as building together. And I really encourage everyone here and online to continue strengthening collaboration and build a successful container logistics system for our country. And please join the CUF to make it function. Please come in as members. There is a registration desk at the back. We're also just having founding members that we will announce that have already taken up space, and we will talk about them in the course of the program. So with those few words, welcome. I'm now going to, just at the tail of saying what is CUF, I just want to look at what the governance of it looks like. And I'll be asking William to come forward, Mr. William Fuller, to come and talk about the legalities of the CUF. Thank you.
Everyone, good morning. My name is William Fullard. I'm an attorney. My role in all of this is somewhat less glamorous. I was simply the person who incorporated the company. So attorneys are notoriously boring speakers, so I'm going to promise to be mercifully brief. If we could go to the next slide, please. Or I can, okay, great, thank you. So the Container User Forum was incorporated as a NPC in October of last year. I'm sure all of you know what those letters NPC stand for. Non-profit company. So in a nutshell, this forum is not going to make anyone rich. The profits will not be distributed. If there are operating profits, they'll simply be plowed back in the company to fund its expenses, to fund its operating activities, and to pursue its objectives. So why the decision then to incorporate as a company in terms of the Companies Act? When the founders of this forum were setting it up, they actually had a lot of options available to them to structure this forum. One of the options available to them, for example, would have been to set it up as an unincorporated association governed by a constitution. That would certainly have been a lot cheaper, a lot easier, and arguably a lot more flexible. Because, of course, when you're an association and you have a constitution, well, you set the rules. There aren't any external set of rules that you have to live up to. But the founders of this forum, having regard to the caliber and the public profile of the members that they expected to participate in this forum, decided that the following would be very important for these members. A, transparency, B, corporate governance, and C, that the forum would be run by a rules-based system. So this decision to incorporate in terms of the Companies Act was a very deliberate choice. The Container User Forum is not just an idea or a concept. As I stand before you, it's a company that's operational and in existence. It's registered, it's opened a bank account. I'm happy to say that there's some money in the bank account already. It's appointed a board of directors, an interim board of directors who have adopted a wide range of policies, and it's also appointed some key officers on short-term contracts. So we have a chief executive officer, a chief financial officer, and a chief operating officer. The one thing I need to say to you is that some of what I've said is very much provision. Why do I say it's provision? I'm going to explain that right now. So, if you have a look at the memorandum of incorporation of this company, you might be surprised to see that it doesn't make provision for members. Now, you may know there's two ways to set up a non-profit company. The first is you can have a non-profit company without members, which in my view pretty much becomes personal fiefdom, or you can have a non-profit company with members. There's no intention to set up a personal fiefdom. This was very much a measure taken out of expediency. So the founders, having regard to the caliber of the members that would participate in this forum, had regard to the fact that they would all have corporate teams, all have legal teams, and the perception, rightly or wrongly, and I think it was a correct perception, is that if you had to sit down with all of these members and try and hash out a memorandum of incorporation that everyone would be happy with, it would take some time, and that it would delay the launch of this forum. So this is very much a decision that was taken out of expediency, and the decision was, let's just register as a non-profit company without members, and once the new board is in place, that will transition. The new board will amend the memorandum of incorporation and will transition to a non-profit company with members. And there'll be both voting and non-voting members, as I think someone else will probably explain. Can we have the next slide, please? So, the interim board, as it was established, those are the names up there, those are the founders of the company. Since then, my understanding is that the chief executive officer and the chief financial officer of the forum have also been co-opted onto that board, but it's very much a provisional board. Once the strategic members are in place, a new board will be elected and constituted, and they'll proceed to make the changes and finalize the appointments that I've just discussed. I wanted to circle back to this idea very quickly of corporate governance. So there's a very strong focus in this organization on corporate governance. If you read the Memorandum of Incorporation, you'll see it provides for the annual financial statements to be audited. It's a deliberate choice. The Memorandum of Incorporation envisages a code of ethical conduct and a company secretary. These are all measures designed to strengthen the governance and transparency of this organization. The interim board has also been busy, and it's adopted a whole number of policies, which you see there behind me, which I'm not going to read out. promised I'd be brief, so let me just close with this. There have been some concerns expressed about the Competition Act, and I was talking to one of our panel members earlier, and it was also alluded to by our previous speaker. In our view, that's a red herring, and I've got two observations to make about the Competition Act. Firstly, just don't contravene it. It's actually not that hard. And secondly, there's nothing that prevents suppliers and competitors from meeting together and from taking decisions, as long as those aren't anti-competitive, of course. To the extent that it remains a live issue, I'm sure that the incoming board will apply its mind to it, and there are measures that can mitigate any concerns that might be. One of those measures, for example, is to have someone like me at your meetings, not me, but someone like me at your meetings, to make sure that you don't contravene the Act. I'm not sure that's necessary, but that's something I'm sure that the board will deliberate on. Thank you. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think the reason why this is very important at a launch is actually just to say who exactly we are and how we are structured so that it's not lip service. And you can see that there's a lot of work that the members, when they are in, still have to do to make sure that it meets most of our requirements as industry. So we are going to move on because we don't want to kill your time. I don't know, Janita, are you ready? So we have actually just swapped around the panel conversations, and we will start with your panel. Janita is the interim chair of the CUF, and she'll be moderating her group, and I'll hand over to you to take this process forward. Thank you.
And welcome all. I think we probably in around the world, I think South Africans are probably the #1 resilient nation. So I was in the second panelist, but believe it or not, I'm on the first one and I'm still breathing. So that's why I quickly ran out, fetched my glasses and came back. So now you will understand. And also I've got a surprise. I've got Dr. Jan Havenga. He's promised to give us 10 minutes and he's going to cover 50 slides. So let me hold him accountable, because otherwise we could leave our audience online. And then I'm going to ask my panelists to come to the front, which is Deirdre and Jaap, together with Professor Jan. So Professor Jan, 10 minutes, we can keep you accountable with the 50 slides. And then we will come back and we're just going to take then 3 slides that we want to summarize and position why do we need a regional hub in sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you. I think, Nimi, maybe you can roll to the next 2 slides, just to help him. Yes, no, we're resilient. And agile. Thank you, Michelle, and agile. Professor Jan, you hear it, resilience, and you heard it from Transnet. We're agile, so...
I joined Transnet in 1979, so I can tell you about resilience.
You can
stand here. And yes, Nimi is my conscience. Where is she? You have to wave loudly. And I've lost my watch somewhere. I'll try and be brief. I did give Dr. Maria 3 options of what I could present, and she picked the longer one. So please just, if the time runs out, I will just go do what's not professional and just quickly go to what I think is you really need to see, if I can call it that. But I'll start with this, and I always start with this because logistics is an input into your economy. It's as simple as that. So we measure the relationship between logistics costs and GDP, and we've been doing it for more than 20 years. And we say we're more or less okay in South Africa, around about I can see myself here, around about 12% or so, whatever, that's fine. But we have a huge services economy. If you compare that logistics cost to the economy that you can weigh, which is 800 million tons, it's more or less what our economy weighs, it's more than 50%, which means on average, any commodity in this country, more than half of it's logistics. And if it sounds funny to you, ask me afterwards and I'll explain to you why. But it is, this thing doesn't work. Oh, there it goes. Okay, and now, okay, so one of the most important reasons for this is what I call our spatial challenges that we have in our country. We're a spatially challenged country. Now, what do spatially challenged countries normally do? Now, Zain and myself, we've worked in India, which has got much of the same problems as us. We've worked in Mongolia, we've worked in Uzbekistan. The most important thing that you can do is to organize your logistics better. Around logistics hubs, around freight villages, around consolidation centers. If you talk to Uzbekistan, a double landlocked country, and it solved it by saying, I need to have a spatial plan for my country, I need to have an organized spatial system around logistics hubs to make it work, and they make it work like that. One of the temperatures or ways in which you can measure that is to look at what do you have on rail. And this is the horrible, sad story for South Africa. If you look at it, the green there is general freight, and you can see what has happened to general freight, and then the export lines. You spoke earlier today that the bulk lines are recovering better. I'm going to come back to back, and the other line is GDP. Now, is the general freight business of Transnet recovering? So it looks like there's a little recovery there. But wait a minute, we appointed some really clever people in the railways to look after manganese. And they've done a fantastic job. That's the manganese line. Take manganese out. 2025, general freight declined in South Africa. After all of the work that the National Logistics Crisis Committee did, good work, the new leadership that you referred to, and I agree, I like Michelle, Russell, they're great people. We are not getting there with GFP. We're not making it. And if you're looking at it on a monthly basis, this is monthly rail volumes going all the way back to last 13, 14 years. There is a recovery. But it is slow, it is sluggish, we're not getting there. And it's because it is mostly bulk. And that's the reason. A lot of hard work being done, but there's some problems that we still need to sort out, if you look at it. Now, what is the nature of the recovery really? The red is the bulk lines, and the other is the rest. Now, you can see what has happened and where we have recovered. We have recovered on the bulk lines. And we've not done anything yet on GFP. But it gets worse than that. I always talk to myself, and Jaap, he took me to task earlier when I talked about 250 million tons again. He says, we have to look at value, and so I'll come back to value. It's true, he's 100% right. We have to look at value, but let's just humor our minister, and I say it with a lot of respect. I really like her. She's a hard-working, clever, focused lady, but humor her, she's got a very simple target, 250 million tons. I can tell you, to get to 250 million tons, that's where you're going to get it. There's very little left in the bulk lines. The rest is in GFP. And if you ask me, what does that GFP look like? And Zain drew me a slide just before the meeting, and it's too late to put it up. I'll send it to you. But half of what is missing, close to half of what's missing, will be in containers. Or it will not be. So we have to say, dear Minister, we need to solve this problem on containers. This is the platform on which this is going to be solved. Or you, Minister, are going to miss your target. Half of what's missing. And you can see it in a black and a red line. The black line is what is available. So we can work ourselves to a standstill. We're not going to get around 145 million tons on the two bulk lines, and that's where we're stuck. You can add some manganese and some stuff to the others, but you're going to need about half of that's going to be containers. You need to get there. And if you look 30 years into the future, the railway will be a container railway. It will be a container railway, an intermodal railway by 2055, or it will not be. That's the two options. There's no other option on the table, or it will not be. We know that our demand, we started our demand forecasting in 2006, so our demand model is now 20 years old. So we can now look back at our 20-year forecast from long ago, and we know that we are right. Now, how do we segment this freight? I'm not going to go into the detail of this, but what's important about this, we have different freight segments, like iron ore, like coal, and then you get the things that are called their finished palletized goods. And that is what should be on the rail. The pink is what should be on the rail that isn't. Simple. Should be on the rail that isn't. And that translates into congested corridors. Now, the coal and the iron ore line guys, the coal guys, for instance, in 2022, they can jump up and down, and I would, if I was them. If the coal price goes to 5,000 rand a ton and suddenly 25 million tons doesn't make it on the railway, This is 125 million, and that's enough reason to start a national debate and go and shout at the president and fight with the money. I mean, I can understand that. But the question here is much different when we talk about finished palletized goods. That is where the real money is, because if you look at this slide says, all of that is still there. I've not taken the coal and iron ore and the stuff away. I just translated this into value. And what you look there is the value of what is missing on rail. And then we get to finished palletized goods. That is where the real value is. And that is where the real money is being lost. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole value chain, but in some of your diagrams, you've got the value chain of the economy drawn out like that, from extraction, intermediate manufacturing, final manufacturing, and consumption. And each one of those stages you can export and you can import. The percentage is the percentage of the total transport bill for South Africa. 1/4 is from final manufacturing to consumption. 1/4 is mostly in containers, mostly line haul, mostly between Johannesburg, Durban and Cape Town. That is 1/4 of the total cost of logistics of South Africa sits there. And nobody is doing anything about it up to this point. A lot of people are actually doing a lot about it, but nothing is really visible yet. And we need to make it visible, because that's 1/4 of the cost. And now if you look at the railways, that's the flow of volume and the flow of value. I've not taken the coal and the iron ore line out in the middle one. I've just translated the flow into value, into rands. And then it disappears. And then if you look at the rail flows, Jaap and myself, 15 years ago when we drew this map for the first time, used to talk about the missing railway. You can see the missing railway. It's very clear there. And we talk about this. This is what we have at the moment. You have a DC to DC transport from manufacturer to retailer. This is what we want to do. This slide is 15 years old. I'm still using it because we haven't still done it. So it's there, you know. So, and if you go from there to there, we can calculate how many tons there is and how much is available, etc., etc. We can do all of that. The slide has gone funny, but what I can tell you, if we do this perfectly, we'll still have to double the N3. There will still be road freight. If we don't do this, we will have 16 lanes on the N3. This is what the rest of the slides in has disappeared. The other thing I wanted to say, and Jaap asked me about this as well, we know about international containers because that's how it works. It comes to the port, goes over the quay, there's an inland depot, and you send it to a retailer or whatever. But we don't understand domestic intermodal yet. If you stop a train in America, any train, that's got containers on it, 1/2 of the containers on that train have never crossed the quay. And many of them are non-standard, they're 53 foot, etc. Europe also understands this. We are beginning to create that understanding in India. The first 2 freight villages that from the World Bank side we proposed is now being built. One is finished in Varanasi, the other one in Balaghat, just outside of Kolkata. To do this, what I described on the right-hand side, and that market is double the size of the other market. I know the figure of 2.3 million TEUs maybe slightly sound too low to you, but that's what actually gets distributed through the country and can go into a system like this. I think it's probably about 4.5 million that crosses the quay wall. Point is, the domestic intermodal opportunity is even bigger, especially on a corridor like Cape Cod. Really need to get there. This is just to explain what it is. I'll distribute this later and how it works. Now, Juanita, you asked me a specific question. I brought another 15-year-old slide with me that people laughed at me when I showed it to them the first time. Our prediction was trade routes is moving north. The north-south corridor is disappearing. Walvis Bay and Maputo is gaining more and more traction, momentum, investments. So is Lobito and Lekala. And this is a 15-year-old slide, and that other one will happen as well. For us, the shipping lines will pass us by. They will stop at Lobito and stop at Walvis and just go around. We are going to become more and more irrelevant. We predicted this 15 years ago, and our prediction was correct. Those ports are growing and growing and growing all the time, and I see it. A lot of work that we are doing in Mozambique and in Tanzania at the moment. So that is happening. We have an example of how it works. You can find free. Somewhere we need to figure this out because people need to invest in this. Now we want the private sector to invest in this, not government. All that government needs to do is sort out the railway for us. So this is my second to last slide, is what now? We need to rebuild the rail network. Without this, this is not going to work. Then we need system actor collaboration, which is what we have here. The container fleet planning, operational scheduling, all of those things. Develop the market and do spatial planning. Because that's the only way in which we're going to get where we want to be. For me, to summarize it like this, in short, rebuild the network, get a spatial plan for freight villages, and collaborative container fleet planning. We need that, because without that, we're not going to get to 250 million tons. And by the way, the 100 billion is not a wild guess. That's what we waste in South Africa because of poor last mile and long haul logistics planning for. That's more or less our calculation what is missing. So this country can save 100 billion rand and become much, much more competitive if it can get an integrative cap. And the CUF can help with this integrative cap. It really can. Thanks.
To sit here because you said we're in a mess. So I'm going to ask Deirdre and Jaap to join us on the stage.
Ek het nou nie die tyd opgehoor nie, jammer.
No, I think we love hearing your intellect and how you package it.
Okay.
So Jan, you and Deirdre can see, or let's say Jaap, you and Deirdre can see now the map, and I think the audience on the virtual line can see that as well. So when Jan is putting that, he said, we are in a mess. So just your view on it, what would you say? Do you agree? Do you think there's something, and we will come to another 2 slides that he put up, because ultimately what we want to do is we want to say, well, we position the regional hub, but what does it mean for us, and what is the building blocks that we want to do? Thank you.
So thank you for that. I love the term mess, Jan, but for a different reason. I hate the word challenge, because I have no idea what to do with a challenge. That's something somebody gives you if you forget your password. So, and I think we have a Six Sigma expert in the room. Where's the lady?
Nasipa, she's in the overflow room.
So, there's the Six Sigma expert. Master black belt, and a few in the world. So, in science we have problems, puzzles, and messes, if you read the science. Problems, or puzzles, you know the answer. We all grow up making puzzles. We just complete the puzzle. We did it through the CRT type process, and that's what, as Jan showed, arrested some of the losses we made. When you hit problems, you need some breakthrough improvement of sorts, typically technology or a new process or organization, and that will bring some solve that specific problem. If you look at that picture, it's 100% right, it's got a mess. There are so many problems. Solving the next problem just creates another problem. You have to actually dissolve the problems by a new design. And there's a whole body of science around it from Russell Ackles. He doesn't talk about an ideal design, he talks about an idealized design. Given what's on the table, what do we do? And so if you look at the rail reform, and it's actually become a rail import reform problem. It started with this rail reform. Rail is a big bugbear. We need to think of the whole rail policy, the separation, the creation of a rail infrastructure manager, the separation of TNPA out of Transnet, those network industries leaving Transnet as part of the redesign. It's a fundamental systemic redesign. So we will not succeed unless we have this master plan, the spatial master plan for the country, which is the answer to the mess. We've done all the homework now, we know exactly what's wrong. We've had 1,400 pages of reporting from 96 companies, from 11,000 participants, of which 1/3 was intermodal specifically, and 162 submissions. The portal of this. And it's publicly available, you've all seen it, and thank you for participating. So we know what's wrong. Now we need to solve for it. So what are we going to do? And our number one, I cannot say it's a challenge, but it is a challenge. Our number one challenge is that we second in the queue with logistics after the energy in the program of reform. So the IPP program had a very high levelized cost of electricity at the time when the technology was put on the market in the Northern Cape, the solar power. The Treasury has given almost R250 billion of government guarantees to get the electricity up, which means in the freight space, all projects must wash their own face. You cannot, we still have to do passenger rail, and we're busy now with the municipalities and the water problem in the country. Those are subsidizing solutions, require subsidizing. So we need to find ways to solve our mess with as little as possible commitment from the state. I don't speak for the state, but I'm in this PSP unit. That means we need to be very surgical, like we did in Mongolia with the World Bank. Very surgical what money we put into the network, into the ports, sufficiently so, and create this policy framework around it of trust and confidence, that the private sector can innovate. The sort of things Francois has been pushing for a long time, and many others. So I'm confident the breakthrough is in freight villages. You know, because of this tyranny of distance of our country, we all live in the middle that consume what happens at the seaside. We need to find a reason to stop along the way and do business along the way. We were killing distance. That's all we've been doing all along. The train leaves Durban, or the truck leaves Durban, stops in Joburg. And the same with the Cape Town route and so on. And the relative cost of transport is so high because of the way we live in Gauteng. So the rail runner that Mike wants to do, this intermodality, that ability to have a low-cost cut-over mechanism, it is key. And it is most key on this corridor. Sorry, I'm stopping.
Deidre is going to tell you if she can wait so long. She's the cargo.
So we have a Russian doll. A ship is too big for a set of trucks. So you need to put a train in the middle. So typically 1,000 to 2,000 boxes coming in and off the ship. That'll be a truck every 90 seconds into the port. It's not sustainable. But it's only 6 or 7 trains a day. So we have to get clever about these things. And in the past, we would only load the train in Joburg and then drive to Durban. We do nothing in the middle. You ask the guys from the forestry industry, where do they know where they want the train to stop and consolidate, but there's nothing really in it for them. So the model is there's definitely short-haul shuttles to evacuate the port because the city has encroached the port. Then we need to leverage the common route distance up to Escort. Mooirivier Escort is where the rail and the road's right next to each other, first 200 kilometers. Escort's difficult to go down the hill into the town. Mooirivier is on the N3. Built a freight village there. The province is pushing hard. Many people living in water, electricity and so on. Find out a good reason to do it there. It's an obvious choice. Then coming into Gauteng, as you hit the entrance Gauteng, there's a development, market ready. We just need to get the proposition through. Going into City Deep is a nightmare. In 1978, City Deep was an absolute pleasure. Now it's completely encroached. Need a new super terminal. It's probably on the Pretoria-Joburg axis of the R21. And if the state has to get involved in it, it has to have an asset to do it. Otherwise, the private sector must just go and do it. We must create the environment to be able to do it. So I want to make just this point. A ton of iron ore or coal, $100 a ton. What's worth? 130 million tons of it, more or less. A ton of manganese or chrome, $200 a ton. 2x. There's only 30 million tons or so of them. A ton of containers with $2,000 a ton. It's a 10x from what a ton of iron ore is. But there's only 35 million, 40 million tons. A ton of cars, $20,000 a ton. But there's only 2.5 million tons in the country. So my plea of the value volume reality is we must never underestimate this very corridor, Joburg-Durban specifically. 25% of sub-Sahara boxes go through that port. It's the obvious place to do the hub, and we can have that in a second round of talking. If we cannot get that 130 whatever billion dollars worth of GDP working, there's no point moving iron ore to Saldanha. We're not going to save the economy. Jan showed it in volumes as well. So we really have a fantastic opportunity. We're coming with a very low base. So I must personally congratulate the CUF. You've come together with this reality to create this infrastructure, organizational infrastructure, to make visible this problem. Minister has given us two metrics, 250 million tons, but she said the second metric, 30 gross crane swings per ship working hour. Durban Gateway Terminal, the concession, it's the biggest in the country, it's at 18 out of 30. You know, a good medium-sized port in the world is at 30, fancy ports are at 65. If you do that sum, and you get that metronome to work, you'll see how the tons come and the containers come into it. But we don't have the marine infrastructure yet, and we can talk about that now.
Deirdre, listening
That's
to
the
you,
mess.
listening to Jan and Jaap, what do you say? Because you in the trenches, you work with the cargo owners. What's your opinion about it?
Shall I say it's a mess?
No.
I want to concur with Jaap. And I think from a chemicals perspective, the chemicals are a foundation for the economy. Anything that we wear, we touch, has got chemicals in it. And the chemical industry in South Africa is importing a lot of the chemicals. So for us, containers are important. The functioning of the ports is important. And we had an incident, as you know, 2 days ago, where one of the shipping lines came in and there was important containers to offload. They chose not to offload those that was placed as high priority. And that particular multinational chemical company had to close its business for 3 days. It was late in coming into the port by 5 days, etc. So for us, the value chain is critical. And containers, we want rail. Remember, most of the chemicals that are transported are hazardous. So it is easier and more environmental friendly to have that on rail. You were talking about Escort and places like that. We also have a chemicals hub in Umvagontweni. We used to have rail going through there. It would help the industry largely. But there is no tangible reason at this stage for them to actually start that again. So I think from a chemicals perspective, the CUF for us is, it's got to be effective, which I think it could be. It's got to be efficient. I think one of the other areas that is critical for us and needs to be put out there is the transparency. We need to, I think a lot of these hubs, there seems to be collusion in it, and their people sit together and they have it close to their hearts. This is an opportunity for us to be open, transparent, telling what we are doing, what we need, and that the private sector needs to get involved. We know government is not capable of doing what they are supposed to do as a government, and we've seen in the NLCC and other forums that it's important that the private sector goes in. So for us, it's around from start to finish, if I could put it that way, through the value chain, that there's efficiency. Things like wind, you were talking about some of the other ports to see what some of they have done in the adversement of having wind, like in Cape Town. But we need to understand that from the time that that vessel enters the port to the time it gets to the consumer, that we actually have efficiency and transparency. And that to us is the most important. And collaboration. I think I've said this in a number of forums. No matter where we are, we need to collaborate. We cannot work in silos, to your point earlier. It's important that we actually hold hands together. If you look at the chemical industry, as I said, it actually feeds into the health, it feeds into pharmaceuticals, it feeds into automotive, it's paper and pulp. I mean, there's not one sector of the economy that chemicals doesn't feed into. So for us, it is critical that we actually get a stable and effective and efficient system of transportation from a logistics point of view. When we look at the hub, I think it's critical as well. It can grow the industry. And I'm not only talking about myself as the chemical industry, but we look at agriculture, we look at fertilizers. We can play and be the special hub for sub-Saharan Africa in particular, where we can grow the economy. And we also look at the AFCTFA from a trade perspective, that we can ensure that we grow the industry itself and other sectors that fall within and for which the chemical industry feeds into, to actually grow the economy as well. So for us, the forum is critical. And I think I'm hoping that other colleagues that are online and that are present here today will actually join the forum, because we need to stand together. We need to be one voice. Because if we are going to be fragmented, we've seen what's happened with fragmentation. Ali was speaking earlier, we were just talking about times that we've cooperated. It was during COVID. I think, Unita, you and I were online for those many months.
Yes.
It's got to be solution-based. So that for us is important, that a forum like this is solution-based. So, every time there's a crisis, then everybody huddles together and we can make it work. And we've made it work. Let's not wait for a crisis. Let's make sure we have a solid foundation to work off and actually be solution-based going forward.
Well, Deirdre, I haven't shared my slides with you, but I want to come to this one and then we will come back to because that's a South Africa context, Jan, that you've put. So when you look, colleagues online and here in the room, that's what we're looking at. So I don't want to rephrase it as a mess, but that's probably come back to what you said, Deirdre, is that you need reliability and sustainability. So Jan, I just want to come back to you there, because there's many people in the media that said we actually getting now, our economy is going to grow because of the crisis or the war, and we're going to get now all the ships passing Good Hope. But I think that's a notion that's not going to help us now, because we don't have a specific dry docks for stress vessels, so we cannot cope them. We don't have a service for auxiliary service what the shipping lines require. So I'm not sure why they do write that in the news. Is it a finger opportunity that we miss? So that's my question I want to ask you. Then, Jaap, I want to come back to you, Jaap. In the specific one, when you look at that, we might make the Eastern Cape a transshipment hub. But the moment we do it, it links back to the Central Corridor. So how do we work collectively to achieve what we want to make sure that's a transit hub? And then maybe the biggest issue in the transit hub is probably the efficiency and the equalizer fee, because how do we make people to use the Eastern Cape? And then, Deirdre, I just want to ask you on that, and I think you probably know that you probably go easier through Durban because it's already a proven trade route and you know it's working, although not the efficient that you want. Would you consider any of the other things in your business model if the pricing elasticity will allow that? Yes, you can, and then I can go to Jaap and Jan.
I think we will. I must say we have seen an uptake in Walvis Bay, to your point, that we're using other ports. So Walvis Bay, we've got a lot of chemicals coming through, as opposed to Durban Port, but Durban Port is still the most used port at this stage. But we are looking at others, even Dar es Salaam. Some of the people are bringing in containers to Dar es Salaam and transporting them down from there to South Africa. So anything that is cost effective, anything that is efficient, we would certainly be looking at. But at the moment, the companies are looking elsewhere. And the efficiency at the ports, even Durban, has improved. We had a board meeting about 3 weeks ago, and the point was made: how are you perceiving the port? And basically, the comment was it doesn't seem to be going backwards, which I think is a good sign, but the movement isn't fast enough. So any of the improvements that we are looking at would be beneficial, cost-effective, and also make us competitive. We would certainly look at those.
Thank you. Then, Jaap, can I come to you just on the transshipment on Eastern Cape?
Yes, I think we've got, we must be very clear what we want to do with the Port of Durban and the Port of Ngqura. Durban is the obvious place for sub-Sahara redistribution, because 25% of sub-Sahara comes from Durban into Durban for domestic use anyway.
Just, you've got Palesa from the Durban Chamber.
Hello, Palesa. So when we bring in a vessel and we drop off a quarter of the continent, or a fleet of vessels, drop off a quarter of the continent's boxes in Durban anyway, well, then it must be the obvious place from where we will redistribute the rest of the subcontinent. That's not possible today because these guys have now gone with the friendly opposition and bought ships that are double the size that Durban can handle.
Oh, these guys, the shipping line. Remember, the audience won't know. The shipping lines.
Maersk and MSC are leading it. And so their fleet constitution determines what we must accommodate. So if you look at Singapore, Shanghai, Hong Kong, to Africa, into the, dare I say, through the Red Sea, into Europe and across, their networks need to be optimized for these very large, these ultra-large carriers, 24,600 boxes per carrier, depending on full and empty. We can do maybe 12 to 14,000 in Durban today. So they need to bring that stuff somewhere, drop it off and go back to Singapore. When we look at the Atlantic crossing, this is servicing in the south, servicing Santos, which is a river port for Sao Paulo, as well as Buenos Aires and so on. You can run smaller ships across the Atlantic if there's a drop-off point in South Africa. If we don't do this, they will find other ports, these shipping lines to transship. Walfish Bay is currently only 750,000 boxes. Phase 2 and 3 will take them 3 years to build, 5 million boxes transshipment competency. Then we're going to pay $2,000 a box to take it back from Walfish Bay to Cape Town. $2,000 a box to take it back to PE if we want it in the car terminal there, all the way to Durban. This does not make sense. So we need to, so our regional hub plan is to reconfigure the port of Durban substantially to take these very large vessels in, take off what we need here, and then have a complex infrastructure, because there are many more boxes coming into the port now, and then redistribute from there into the region.
Or move the transshipment cargo to Eastern Cape.
Well, at transatlantic cargo is easy to take that decision. If it makes sense for them to drop the Durban stuff and carry on this very large vessel to the Eastern Cape for the rest, that's fine. But they must be able to call on Durban then with the large vessels. If they first call on Port Elizabeth, or Ngqura, is actually the port, then you have to bring the stuff back to Durban. And if you take it by sea, that's one cost. If you take it by land, you have an immediate problem. And that is the hinterland corridor. It's far. It's about, 1,200, 1,300 kilometers versus by road 550 and by rail 720 through on the NatCor and N3. Plus it's a double line railway to Joburg. There you have to sneak in between the manganese trains, in between car trains, hop on the Cape Core. You know, it's a nightmare. Change power and electricity differences. The logistics of making that corridor work is difficult. One can argue in the very long term, use the route via Kroonstad, Bloemfontein, dedicated to containers up to 2050. But then we'll probably have to rebuild that corridor, in the master planning mode. So my view is, if we cannot bring large vessels into Durban, it'll be very difficult to become a regional transshipment hub, either for the Atlantic crossing or for sub-Saharan district. If we can, it's not big money, maybe in terms of the handling, but very good business in terms of economic development, free trade area, continental, these things. I was in Beira last week with the World Bank. They're just ignoring us.
They're going to tell me now it's
Yeah.
time. So 2 minutes.
They're just ignoring us now, absolutely right. They're doing this.
Yeah, and just before you finish, because that's the last, I think that can leak me under time, because we need to break and then we're going to have another panel.
Your question quickly.
So my question that I want to
a new
ask you, I want to change this a little bit. Remember you gave us the three things, 250, 100 billion, and we need to resolve the problem. Now you hear Deirdre and you hear what Jaap is saying. What would you think would be the immediate that we need to do this year? Just for 2025, to stabilize and to take us a little bit forward. 2026.
Now I'm first going to answer your other question.
Okay, you can, you're the last one.
I'm
so
going
you
to jump right in because it was so interesting when you spoke about Walvis Bay. Now just imagine if we built a railway corridor, the Trans-Kalahari, and we've done all the sums, and it is possible to have large container trains running from Walvis Bay to Gauteng. There's lots of advantages in it. The second thing I just wanted to say, we always toyed with the idea, how do you make Durban bigger? And the first discussions was now 20 years old. I remember them within Transnet, and the dig-out port came up. But one of the ways of obviously making the port bigger is by having a functioning extended gate. And the World Bank, we call that extended gate, which is your dry port next to the port. So a place like Cape Town or whatever, you run shuttle trains to that makes your port in essence bigger. In essence bigger. That's the second thing you could do. The third thing is we must not forget about combined planning between Durban and Richards Bay. In a long term, 30 years from now, what is the plan with all the coal mines. Now the plan is to develop it into a massive agricultural commercial hub. And then what happens with the export line, the coal line, I think it should become a very large, heavy oil intermodal line between Richards Bay and Gauteng. And when I'm thinking about freight villages for Gauteng, we must also remember that, because that is a golden opportunity in the long-term thinking. Somewhere there's going to be a switch over. You say, we can start using Richards Bay as a container terminal. What we need to do right now is we need to organize ourselves to plan the mess. We need to have this central organizing facility, or whatever you want to call it. The collaborative forum is a critical one, and it stands on 3 legs. A collaborative forum from industry to mimic, and I like the way it was compared to Richards Bay Coal Terminal and the Iron Ore Users Forum, to mimic that. We need that very, very strong body, a really strong body on the private sector that drives some core messages around us. You know, the fight, that's not a fight anymore, luckily. With Transnet, it was very simplistic. You do this, do this, do this, I won't do this, I won't. We need to get to the simple view of organizing ourselves so that we can get this done from the private sector side. We need to engage government to come with a central spatial plan to organize the mess.
Yeah.
We need to sort it out. And the third thing is we must fix our general freight network. We've got the train operators, we've got you guys, we've got people that wants to build freight villages, but we need to be able to run trains. That's the other thing. Thanks.
Jan, you and Jaap and Deirdre, thank you very much. I think you've got an audience here listening to you and people online, and I think that you share the insights with us is that we really have a plan. We just must make sure we put it like Outport in Durban and not 30 years old, hopefully Palesa. I think this time we will make it work. So thank you very much, and I think we can break for coffee and then we come back. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Can we work on moving back? We're about to start. Can we move back? I said to them, give me power. I want to. Can we please try to move back to the venue? We are starting in 1 minute. If you are still having coffee, your coffee and come with it. Mind? Can you choose? I know that's an unpopular thing to actually break people from chatting and networking, and one of the reasons why we come here is that. But experience has taught some of us that it's being unpopular and just making sure that you stick to time, that everybody is happy at the end, that we finished on time. So you must, in between, just maneuver and manage the unpopularity. And we're actually going to get to the last bit of our launch today before we close, and I'm going to introduce the CEO of the CUF, the person who's actually pulling it all together, Ms. Brenda Magwaka, and she will actually run the next session. Thank you. Over to you, Brenda.
Thank you, Speaker.
Don't sit down. Oh, yeah.
Am I on? Yeah, I'm going to get my panelists to come to the front. Theo Papas, an executive manager at Maersk. He's done a lot of work on the automotive sector. Theo is joining us to just answer one of the questions that I've put up to say, why CUF now? Please come to the front, Theo. Thank you. Next, we have Innocentia. I don't see her. Oh, yeah. Innocentia is coming from MSC. She's one of the general managers at MSC, and she's running, She's one of the directors at MSC, and yes, I mustn't take from you, Janet. And she'll be also supporting us in answering why CUF now. And I think she's quite excited to tell us why. Michelle van Burechel, my ex-colleague from Transnet. She's the general manager, commercial and strategy for Transnet Port Terminals. Welcome, Michelle. While we're preparing to go through your questions, I'm giving you, each one of you, just 5 minutes to just maybe tell us your take of what happened with the last panel. What is your take in terms of the deliberations that they've given us thus far, while you're warming up for your own questions? It can be
Yeah.
any one of you. Yeah,
I'm
Michelle?
happy. I found it extremely interesting, right? And well, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for the invitation, and congratulations, Brenda. I've worked with Brenda in the past, and she's incredible. So I think she's going to be a great asset to the CUF. I just want to say thank you so much. I think the previous panel was really, really interesting, and what I really liked about it was the long-term vision. I think generally our focus has always been short-term, and we really need to think about, South Africa industry growth 20, 30, 40 years from now, not the next year, 2, 3, 4, or 5, but the next generation. And I think, if we plan the right way and do the right things now, we can definitely make a productive and a great future for everyone, including our children.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And now I'm going to go to your questions individually. Theo, can you tell us, why do you think the CUF is needed in the container sector?
Thank you. I think also thank you for swapping the panels around. It made us take a few more notes and some points from the previous speakers. And it's actually amazing to see the amount of skills and knowledge we have in the room. So I think everyone needs to applaud to that. It was clearly articulated that containers are the backbone of the South African economy. And whilst we do have government now on a trajectory where they want to speak from one platform, you can't necessarily have the state having a voice in something that they're running themselves, right? And what we do see value is that, yes, there are other forums that exist in the bulk, and I think that's been the message the whole time today, is the CUF needs to close the gap for all of us. We all go back to our desks and we speak and we compete as competitors, but the reality is what the CUF can do is become a neutral end-to-end platform that can speak to reforms that the industry needs without speaking around commercially sensitive information, and we had the legal sort of update, but essentially what we think will be value, and I speak on behalf of the group, is that this essentially can be a platform where everyone agrees on priorities, and what's most important is it's a voice for the industry, and then it will actively track the progress. And that's what we're looking to it. So it's moving from a blame game to what can be practically fixed if everyone contributes to a proposed solution.
Thank you so much. Innocentia, what do you think the CUF would differ? How would it differ from other associations that exist? That I know you guys belong to some of them.
Yeah, and thank you, Brenda, and congratulations, Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you.
Of the forum, and I'm pleased to be here. I've sacrificed a very important meeting at MSC today to be here with everybody. And also just looking at the first panel's highlight for me is the nuance that they're showing how SA Inc. as a gateway is so critical, Juanita. We need to regain that status again, but understanding how the future looks and stop being myopic about what's going on and our challenges. That session gave us a full picture. As far as the CUF is concerned, I think it's a unique platform. We're members of SAF, we're members of SASOA in the container space. I'm an operator at MSC, heading the operations department for them. It's a chance for us to have a fertile ecosystem within the value chain as containers, because it encompasses to government bodies that support our movement, to the rail, to the transport and trucks that move our cargo. So I think it's unique, and we have to harness it, as Theo says, that we're going to speak in one voice. We're going to have measurables of making our container life easier. We're going to support the ports better. We're volume owners. The taps lies with us, but they need to come on an infrastructure that's solid, on a productivity that's solid, on a maintenance regime at the ports that's solid, but we must have the conversations together. And I think this platform is very powerful because it's going to allow us to have serious, dedicated, deliberate, driven with results conversations together. So I think it's important and unique.
Thank you so much. The next batch of questions, Michelle, what do you think, how we would turn the pain points in the industry and turn them into opportunities or project packages?
So I think what's definitely come out of this is right. The space creates an opportunity for everybody's voice. It's end to end, which I think is very, very important for the CUF to really to differentiate itself from other bodies. Is it creates a platform for all those in the supply chain to be represented. And in so doing, you would see it as being a lot more strategic, with it offering an insight to all the problems across the supply chain. And then having an opportunity, because obviously we all understand, whether we want to call it a mess or a challenge or whatever the case may be, that you're not going to fix everything overnight. So you've got to prioritize. You've got to look at the big ones. You've got to say what short, medium, long-term, have that long-term vision. But I see it as an opportunity to take those key projects, the smaller ones, the bigger ones, short-term, long-term, and prioritize them. And then also, like you say, or like Nazipa was saying, is to see and allocate who's going to be doing what, and allocate that accountability and responsibility. So it's not just a case of ideas and identifying those issues, but problem solving, and for each of those role players to see how they're going to contribute to resolving the issues within their space. And so by doing that, to contribute to resolution of the issues across the entire value chain. And I think that's, that is very significant. So it's really about turning those things into projects. CUF is almost like a program management body.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. Theo, back to you. What KPIs should CUF track in the first year, at least, so that you give us an indication that we're not doing what we want as CUF, but there's an input from the members on the ground in terms of what we should deliver for the year?
I have a very long list. No, I'm just playing around. I think year one is probably going to be the CUF's most difficult year, firstly because there's a lot of canvassing and a membership drive, right? And there's a significant drive from your end, and today is step one. I know there's a lot that's happened before, but year one is not necessarily about perfection, but let's build credibility is essentially what you want. My opinion is a small set of KPIs,
right,
that are system-wide and that can be monitored actively. I know we already have some of this, but it's around measuring vessel waiting time, measuring congestion, crane productivity, truck turnaround time. And I just want to mention we're going into a new era in South Africa logistics. It's not only Transnet we need to now measure. We have new terminal operators.
Yeah.
We now have train operating companies. So now do we start monitoring rail slot reliability? How is TRIM's performance on the network? And then obviously the usual weather and force majeure impact days, just how that impacts the overall supply chain. So we've spoken a lot today about Transnet.
Yeah.
But Transnet isn't going to be the only player.
Yeah.
We need buy-in from all the other operators that will be able to share info that we can use. So if you can work on these metrics consistently for the first year, I think you will build significant credibility, and you can take that forward, and I think you will be a lot more vocal in the industry going forward.
Thanks to you. There we are, Nimi. Our KPIs are now cut out. I know that you were working on some of the KPIs, but the voice of the industry and the members are saying these are the ones that you could start working on for the year, right? The next set of questions about governance, Michelle. I'll come to you in terms of the governance. And we had the luxury of, you say, taking us through what we should take care of and what we could do and what we haven't done appropriately, but you also advise in terms of what we can do going forward and ensure that we adhere to the legislation and governance. Michelle, your question is, what governance arrangement do you think will keep CUF trusted as a member
So,
of the container sector?
so I think a lot of the governance has already been covered, but to me, what I think what's very important is for it to build trust. And I think building that trust really is about being transparent. As was discussed, it's not a body to make profits and make money, but every cent that is sourced to be spent wisely and constructively. And I think it's very important to make that transparent so everybody feels that whatever is collected is spent appropriately on the right projects, and we see value come out of that. I also think what's very important is that the structure itself is well representative of all the players across the board. And I know that I think, when I looked at the presentation, you'll have different tiers and you've got different levels, etc. But I think it's very important for it to be seen as a credible body. Everybody needs to have some form of representation. And I think those kind of things would be covered in your terms of reference. But I think really at the end of the day, it talks to accountability, transparency, rules, and being seen to be acting in accordance with those rules. Thank you.
Theo?
Yeah, I think similar themes, right? Trust, transparency, and the transparency is all around how we design and get the data. So it must be have the right aggregation. It must be anonymized. All of that, right? I think at least on the ocean side of, let's call it the supply chain, you have your CTS. I made these notes when, thankfully, the first panel was speaking. CTS, NISHEC, Zanata, Intra, all super platforms that will share data, but it's around how do we follow the theme into, let's call it the land side part, the terminal part, and how do we use that? And I'm going to quickly touch on what Jaap spoke about. There was the RFI, right? That was an amazing snapshot of what the industry wants and would like to see last year.
Yeah.
The CUF is probably going to be the snapshot that can be used year in, year out as to what the industry is doing. And I think that's what's key. And that data, if it's in the right format, it isn't manipulated, it's automated to as best as possible. I think that will be key. And essentially that data can be taken to government, to SARS around customs stops, or to all these kind of institutions to say, this is where the bottleneck is, this is our proposed solution, the data speaks to it, let's move forward.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not coming to you yet, Innocentia. William, you talked to us about how we can handle competition law or compliance in meetings. You were proposing that maybe we should have people like you in the room when we have meetings. Is it something that you think it's feasible, or can the industry with CUF handle that competition, ensure that we guard that there's no, the information for the parties is not compromised during CUF sessions?
I think it's always a thin line, but I like the fact that we're going to try and keep it clean and less commercial, right? We're all going to work on facets of success in terms of productivity, stakeholder engagement, advocacy, and set our deliverables very differently with the KPI that Theo has just put forward.
Yeah.
So I think we are wary, as it's just in our nature as shipping lines, to try and keep our commercial, conversation and secrets by ourselves. We tend to have same pain points, which makes life easier. So when we meet, we talk about the pain points that are universal.
Yeah.
So I don't think that will hamper. We just need to be consistent in the governance structure that we set apart for ourselves, and it's all about that transparency, really relative to the performance of the industry throughout the value chain. It's what we need. So we can play the game well. We're good.
Yeah.
I think we'll be good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now I'm giving you just maybe a few minutes to talk to each other, and I think it's not done, but I'm going to do it. Michelle, I'm going to allow Theo or Innocentia to say to you, to ask you a question in terms of what would you need them to do, which add value in your system other than adding more work in terms of administratively. What is it that you want them to do? Because that question is going to come back to them now. What is it that they're going to provide?
Do you ask her or she ask
I'm
us?
asking her.
So I must ask them.
Yeah, that's the question.
Oh. So what I want them to do.
Yeah, which is your pain point at this point in time.
Okay.
From them, what is it that you want them to do less of? So that
So
you
I
become-
think, okay, sometimes we have to be perfectly honest, sometimes we feel like we're caught in the middle of the shipping lines. And I think, if we can try and find a way to apply things consistently, I think that will be great. And I think, at the end of the day, we want to understand your challenges and the issues, that things that you want us to do better. But at the same time, I think, we need to have those frank conversations where we can also explain what we need you guys to do better so that we can help you better.
Thanks, Michelle. Now it's their turn towards you. You could talk to her about anything, capacity, efficiencies, that what is it that you require from them so that we bring more volume in our shows and ensure that Transnet is getting the biggest share of the market.
Yeah.
What is it that you need from them?
I'll take that one first. I think our biggest pain point is maintenance. We talk about jobs being very scarce in our industry. You still don't do 24/7 maintenance regimes. We feel that could bring a big change should we work 24 hours, 365 a day on our equipment. The biggest failure and the biggest gap we've been having over time has been people, equipment, and the regimes around running and packaging those processes for us. So straddlers have been out, they're out, we get new ones, they don't make a difference and so forth. So I believe one quick wins, not just for the new guys coming into DCT, for the entire pod system, that you remain really, really, really agile on the maintenance regimes. Try and make it 24 hours, 365, create those jobs, work with shipping lines as well with the strengths and capacity that we have. And secondly, leave the complementary system of our ports. Do not kill that complementary system. We're already feeling it in Durban.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Now, the CUF's role. You see how easy it is when they communicate together on the platform like this. They talk about their pain points to each other. It is a seamless exercise. I mean, it was not a difficult thing for
You
them
might
to
just
talk to
convert.
each other. It was what?
You might just convert it, yeah.
Yeah, you just have to convert it to actions. This is where I think CUF comes in. I'm going to throw one of my CUF colleagues on the floor to say, what is it that you see we will do for these parties that are on the floor here to ensure that there's efficiency in the system? Unfortunately, we don't have a rail person sitting here. We don't have also your freight forwarder sitting here, but Yonita, you may be the head of that lot. We don't have the other people that could be talking to each other on this floor. What do you think that CUF would be bringing to ensure that there's cohesion and collaboration is seamless? Where's Corley? Okay, she can't answer. Can I give it to you, timekeeper? You didn't hear my questions? Okay, I'll give it to you, Annette. I didn't want to give it to her because she's a player as well in this space.
It's fine, Brenda. I think from our industry, we always have this thing, is the freight forwarders don't like the shipping lines encroach in the freight forwarder space. The shipping line's making too much money from the freight forwarders. The cargo owner doesn't understand it. The cargo owner doesn't want to pay it. And what do we do now? So I think our pain point is that we need to dissect where's the friction and where's the waste. And it's not, I would not think it's in one party or, as in a sense I said, in one process. And as she was coming back, our biggest problem is that we need to build trust and transparency. So I think once we take all the pain points and we map it in a process and we understand and we bring the role players together as you have done beautifully so well, I think that's going to help us quite a lot. So you can see now we didn't talk about pricing, we talk about
neutral stuff,
Processes.
common processes. Yes.
Yes, and I think what Innocentia touched so lightly on, and that's one of the things, is that we have now new strata carriers. The port productivity should increase. That's normally the thought process that business is saying in private sector, there's now new strata carriers. Well, why is the port productivity not improved? But maybe Transnet doesn't tell us the old fleet they need to maintain now, or they take out, or maybe they don't have the right capacity building. And once we start understanding, because in business, we all need to make success. We're not there for a failure. And I think that's why sometimes the tension is so high, because everyone wants to make a success. And by making a success, we forget that we need to work together in a woven supply chain together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anita. And in closing, yes.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
I think what would really be good to see as an output from the CUF is almost, this is very much a network game. And prior to this forum, I would often get calls from Juanita to say, one of my members is struggling with something, who is the right person to speak to? And it would be good for the platform to almost say, these are the right chains of command at this sector, or at this carrier, or at this terminal operator, or this haulier. I think the focus, I'm going to go back to this, needs to be on operational performance, not commercial behavior.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the CUF can play a role, is to steer the discussions to the right decision makers.
Yeah. Thanks. Yes.
If I could just add to that as well. I think also with operational performance, it's all about looking into the future, and that talks to capacity generation. And I think we must also just keep that in mind as well, because I'm thinking bigger than just the immediate.
Yeah, thanks. You know?
And lastly, from my side, I've always been an advocate of efficiency being expensive, right? Should everything be equal, everything be working for us to actually meet those future targets we want to meet, in 250 million tons. As container sector, we need to invest in efficiency. It's expensive, meaning the wheels of CUF must be very well lubricated financially. And the difficulty I think that we're going to face is how we're going to make you thrive financially with being an NPC. But how do we all get our pockets committed so that we support them? And I have a suggestion if you want me to share it now.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
We think that because we are same players in the sectors, how do we, should MSC give you the biggest check, would you listen to me only as well? Only my problems. So that consistency needs equitability. And we think Transnet, we're putting up to you that you must maybe charge at R1 extra on our THCs or cargo juice and fund this CUF. It's my suggestion. I think it will work. It will lubricate your machinery for you guys to get the stakeholders, be in one room and resolve problems.
Thank you so much.
My proposal.
Thank you. It talks to the mega projects that we want to do. It talks to the stuff that we want to start discussing in our dialogues, which we will be handling dialogues on a monthly basis, right? Every 2 months, is it? Yeah, every 2 months. It is going to ensure that the working groups that we talk about, that we formulate, are able to push the projects that are mega projects and priority projects in the system. Thank you so much. With those few words, I would like to thank you all for welcoming my dynamic team on the floor. These individuals, I know them personally. It has been not easy for me to keep a straight face when I'm looking at them, but I'm very proud of them. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. We have to admit that both of those panels have given us a very interesting, different dimensions of we do have, Yap doesn't want me to say a challenge. We do have a challenge, Yap, I'm sorry, man. So it does show that we are addressing a challenge that is existing. And also somebody said, I think it was Theo, to say that the amount of skill and knowledge that we sit with in this country is amazing. In the areas where we specialize, it's just not pulled together to give us the best value. So we often get to these forums and we talk about it, and then it's like another conference and we move on. So what's beautiful about the CUF is the fact that we now begin to have an anchor for the information, and I like the channels who's the right person to talk to about but what. That's becoming very important, because even in the charts that we have when we attempt to look at the mega projects, we then begin to talk about these things. And I'll be happy to actually just talk about the fact that one of the biggest things that the CUF has been looking at the moment, how do we deal with the next season in Cape Town to avoid what happened in December? That's how it should be. And that partnership with Transnet, with TPT in particular, to say, guys, what are you already purchasing? What are you already putting in place? Here's the plan. We've got the studies. We know what went wrong in December. What do we do differently in the next 3 months? That proactive approach to actually solving problems for this sector is going to work. And I think in essential, to top up your suggestions, we're also thinking about how else are we going to, other than membership, because membership is going to help the CUF to move forward. How else are we going to support the bigger projects? The THC one is going to take a bit longer, naturally, because at Transnet they're going to go through their own governance structure, and then there's going to be PFMA. And then so whilst we're dealing with those delays, I think the one thing that we wanted to put to industry is that flexibility of looking into those joint funded initiatives by industry and looking at how do we assist. And I'll give you a typical example of what we do in the coal industry. When we have a project that's burning at Transnet, we collaborate all the coal industry via the Richards Bay Coal Terminal, which is your CUF, and then we pull money from the coal sector and we go to Transnet and say, hey, let's go 50-50, let's do this. Because we know that we're going to benefit as industry and they are going to benefit. We don't want to own their infrastructure, but we do know that if we don't do anything and not co-invest with them, we're not going to get the best value out of core projects and bigger projects. So there are benchmarks in the country that I would like you guys to explore, and I think we're a good example. Even if I say it myself, I think we're a very good example of how it can work, because we've started this some 4 years ago with Transnet, and we've seen the benefits of taking money from the coal industry and consolidating it at RBCT as the center, and then working with Transnet to actually get those projects out. So I think that's another form that can add into what Innocentia was putting on the table. I'm not going to repeat anything that has been said, because it's not good to do that. We all were here. What's remaining for me is, first of all, just to thank you for your patience, being here until we finish, and just coming in person. And thank all those people who actually were online with us. The venue was very challenged, so we really encouraged other people to actually go into YouTube. But it wouldn't have been a good launch if we didn't have physical people sitting in a venue. So we appreciate both parties who actually supported us. I want to thank the organizers of this function and the people who contributed to make it the success that it is. I mean, the team at CUF was tested just through this launch. I was watching from a distance, very interested in the WhatsApps and the mails going through, and I was like, this is how the CUF is going to work. And I can tell you now, Krish, sorry, because we are the only men in the room in that space, that you can see when you put women together what can happen, right? And they push. And I talked about the people who helped us to get the venue together. I want to thank our panelists. People flew from Cape Town, from outside of Johannesburg. People have given up important meetings to actually compromise to be at our launch and be our panelists, to strengthen the base of why the CUF is important, and also just to give us that feel that people understand. Our interim board, can you please come forward so that people can see you and join me as I close? I've got 3 chairs, and I've got 3 interim board members, just for you guys to put a face to the people who have actually worked around to get the MOIs, shareholders agreements, and the founding statements to move forward in the meantime. And they didn't complain once, so we thank you for the support and leadership in this process for us to be able to. You were introduced earlier, so I'm not going to do that again. I just wanted you to brace the stand and be with me as I thank people on your behalf. Our NLCC and B4SA colleagues who actually made time to come today, all the role players and all of you just being in the room. I also just want to do one thing and just talk about the founding members, the people who have already registered and became members, part of the founding members. SAF has been is now a full member of the CUF. CAIA, the Chemicals and Allied Industry Association, is already on board. Barbary Holdings is already on board. Savino Dalmane and AGL, which is the Africa Logistics Group. So that's just an example of we already having people who are takers who actually understand that this can actually deal with our pain points. And just to say to you that you will not be disappointed, because we mean to do what we said we will do and we are set out to do. And we are going to need each and every one of you to work together in collaboration, like both panels have spoken to us, bigger picture and day-to-day stuff in terms of how to make the container industry work. And I think, Jan, you opened our eyes in terms of what the future looks like in 2045. And I liked it when you said it's either going to happen or not happen. And there's nothing in between. So it's in our hands. And thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience. Have a good morning. Thank you. I will not be calling you when you're having it.